It's time to save this hurt this days. Put on your cape and learn the phrase. It's TA with MK. It's TA with MK. Hello there, my Moon Boy and Moon Girl friends, as well as my Perma Bear friends. Welcome back to another episode of TA with MK. My name is MK. Today's episode, we're going to quickly dive into the S&P 500 chart, the Bitcoin chart, of course, and then we're going to go over some of these 3S or 3 short tokens that they have on Kucoin. That's a lot of what I've been trading lately as the market's been kind of obviously going to the downside. And you can make a lot of money if you learn how to trade the market both ways. Now they do come with risk, and so we'll talk a little bit about that and some of the strategies that I use involving these tokens. Another thing that I'm going to leave a link for in the description is my Telegram page. I'm barely starting it. I don't have any admins yet, and I don't have any members yet. So don't expect a whole lot out of that right off the bat. But if you do want to come chat with me on, Telegram and ask me questions there, or I'll obviously post charts in there as well. I will leave the link to that in the description. You're welcome to join that and come hang out, or come tell me I'm a jackass or whatever. No, I don't really care. Whatever you want to do. It'll be a pretty chill room at first, and it's free. That's the key, is it is free. You're literally just coming in there to probably harass me. So feel free to click that. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. If you guys are liking the content, please leave a like and subscribe, and let's go. Alright, so we're going to start out on the S&P 500, or the SPX, and I'm going to quickly just go over a couple of things that just seem kind of obvious, at least to me, and I feel like most channels have been covering this, so this shouldn't be groundbreaking news for you, but if you are one of those people that tend to follow only the YouTubers that seem to be kind of perma-bullish, I just want to offer some caution to you. And this is kind of what we see on the SPX, right? So we kind of had this falling wedge, right? Only had 2 touches on the top, so I wouldn't say the top trend line is super valid, but the bottom, depending on how you draw it, definitely has, at least 1 touch here, 2, 3, depending on if you draw it up here, you got 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4. It's kind of a zone, just like a regular support resistance, right? You kind of have a zone. But the biggest thing is that this is breaking down, right? It broke down to the downside. Now we are at a potential area of support because it was previously resistance here, and then it was able to break out. So I wouldn't call it strong support. In fact, I wouldn't call it anything with the SPX over the past several months, really for almost a year, to be much of support, because it's just been going up so much, that it never really tested any level, at least since, we'll say, back here in November of 2020. It hasn't really tested anything as major support, so that's also concerning, But at any rate, you also have, if we just clear this back up real quick. Oh, wrong thing. Let's get rid of all these lines and stuff I just drew. Okay, and then also, from a bearish standpoint, it's also just the nature of this pattern is you have a high, a lower high, right? Back here you had a low, and then a lower low, and then now we've got a confirmed lower low. So even if you have some short-term, hopium, there's a lot the bulls need to do. But the first thing they need to do is this level back here, which clearly was obviously been, somewhat of resistance support. This whole zone here, you can tell, is pretty significant. We need to break back into this pattern and then push above that. And then at that point, we've got this zone to contend with, where you had support here, support here. When this broke down here, it tested it as resistance, as marked by my red arrow. So even if we do get a push to the upside, you've got to think that a lot of people are waiting just to try to get out of positions. Anybody that went long recently in the past month or so that's been seeing it, the stock markets get wrecked and crypto get wrecked, a lot of those people, you have to think, are just looking for an opportunity to get out of break even, or a small loss, or if they're lucky, maybe small profits. But at any rate, this would be, to me, best case scenario. However, we got to wait and see what happens over the next day or two, because what could be just as likely is this to break down, lose this support, retest it bearishly and push down. And the reason I wanted to bring that up today is if we just look at the SPX, kind of zoom out a little bit, this is still just the daily chart, but if we zoom out a little bit, it's hard to really see any strong support unless you go all the way back to here first. This area, I guess you could say, would be at least a little bit more significant because it was resistance here, and then it tested here. At least it had several months, of time spent around this level. So that would obviously be significant. Above that, somewhat as well, because here you had resistance, flip to support. So at least this is a pretty strong level that it will contend with. I would say this is a pretty strong level. And then the strongest, if we were to go into some sort of a little depression type thing, and the economy continues to pull back and struggle, Back here, you had a lot of interaction. I marked with these red and green arrows. You had resistance, resistance, resistance. Finally, it flipped it as support, pushed higher. And then later, when I had this big crash, it was able to confirm that as support again. So this whole zone's probably the most significant. But obviously, if we were ever to go back down to this zone at some point in the coming, years, months or year, that you would, of course, you'd have bounces along the way, which is why I marked these levels. But the concern, at least for me, when it comes to any sort of hopium for the next, few months to even a year, as far as big upside gains, would just be that we don't have much support here if this starts to break down. And it's in a downtrend. Clearly, we've had lower highs, lower lows. So your bullish hopium would be some sort of a breakout of this and then a breakout of this, before you push higher. And I just like to be upfront and honest on my channel that to me, the odds of that are lower. Now, there will be bounces along the way. And of course, in the coming days, as I make videos, we'll talk about that. But I want to go over the Bitcoin chart, obviously, real quick, too, in confluence with this chart. And I want to go over some of my trading strategies I've had recently that involve the short tokens, which are, 3x short leverage tokens that they have on Kucoin, and kind of how you can use those to make money even when the market is pulling back. Before we move to the Bitcoin chart, I want to also very quickly go over the Bitcoin dominance chart. This is the 4-hour chart. You guys know from previous episodes that I was covering this large rising channel that had a 68% chance of breaking to the downside. When it did, I mentioned on my channel this was going to be our opportunity to trade altcoins. I even mentioned that the measured move was down here at the bottom of the rising channel, essentially, and over time it did trickle its way down there, tested that as support. This would be the level you would have wanted to be cautious with your altcoins, potentially take profits, or maybe even close positions altogether. Then it was creating somewhat of a bear flag. So I had mentioned in a video that, hey, the hopium, if you want to continue to hold altcoins or hope that altcoins can be good to trade, as far as long positions go, we needed this to break down, retest bearishly, and push up. Instead, this isn't really a valid trend line, but instead it basically broke out and put in its first higher high, right? Because you had the lower high, lower high, and then it broke out and put in this higher high. So that's kind of your caution, right? Now it's come down here and retested the top of this green area as support, even put in this little double bottom, and ultimately that's also a higher low. So the first sign of a trend change, typically after a breakout, as far as a trend change from a downtrend to an uptrend, is a series of higher highs and higher lows, right? So we got the higher high, and most recently, looks like we're confirming the higher low. And we know as long as this is trending up, that's bad for altcoins. So kind of the concern right now would be that this is going to break back out, confirm this level as support, and then put in a higher high that's higher than this previous high, right? And you don't want to be part of altcoins as far as long positions when Bitcoin dominance is trending higher. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on the Bitcoin chart. This is the Bitcoin 1-hour chart. The reason I'm not going to spend much time on it is ultimately, to me, it's just going to follow what the SPX does with the economy and stuff and the way that things are going right now, inflation and all of that, even the war still in Ukraine going on. It's just, so that's more world issues, so not even just United States and our stock issues, the world issues. To me, now more than ever, it's just following that. So it's almost pointless to me to do too much TA on Bitcoin outside of just saying, hey, if the SPX does this, this is probably where Bitcoin will go. Because Bitcoin's just going to do an exaggerated version of whatever the SPX does. If the SPX pumps 10%, Bitcoin's going to pump 20 or 30%. If the SPX pulls back 5%, Bitcoin's going to dump 10 or 15%. Not to say those are the exact numbers, but it's going to just more or less, it's a leveraged version of the SPX at this point. So bullish hopium would be that this low that we just had becomes the low. We can either put in a higher low or come back down here and double bottom. And this could also then kind of create what's called an Adam and Eve, where you have a V, and then you kind of get yourself a little rounded bottom. So you can imagine if this were to come down, bounce, eventually break out of this, trickle sideways, come up, it would form what we call an Adam and Eve, right? And then the neckline would be right here. And then you just be looking for it to break out, retest, flip like something like 32,500 as support, and push higher. Now, if this breaks down out of this potential little falling wedge, retests it bearishly, then at the very least, you know, you come back down here to this level of 29,700. And if that doesn't hold, well, then we know that we're going to be pulling back to lower support levels, which I'll go over that more on tomorrow's channel, or tomorrow's video, sorry. And I've also went over it recently on some of the targets I have. I would expect the next bounce to happen around 28K, which is actually the area that I'm looking for some midterm trades on. I'm still shorting things for the most part at this point. Obviously, I'm being more cautious now. My stop losses I'm making tighter because I do think at some point we'll have a little bit of a rally. I just don't know that this is going to be it just yet, at least not without coming back down here and at the very least retesting this low that we had at 29,700 or whatever that was. So we'll just keep an eye on that. We're getting all sorts of alerts right now, and every one of them is to do with stuff just going down, so go figure. But I have noticed, you know, from previous, you know, my trading history, that if I'm getting a lot of alerts to the downside, it's probably time to start looking for longs. So but not yet, right? So in the next segment, before we finish this video, I want to go over kind of my 3S short token strategy on Kucoin. Now, I'm going to make a whole separate video probably tomorrow going more into depth on these tokens, especially as, like I've said, I see more potential downside still in the coming months than I do upside. My personal opinion is that any relief rally that we get would be, you know, small and short-lived, and that we would have more downside before we have any significant upside. Now, does that mean that we'll not, you know, that we're not going to bounce in the next few days and potentially see some sort of a little rally all the way back up to even 40K? No, because that's definitely in the cards, definitely a possibility. One thing that I've learned as a trader is that the market never goes one way the entire time, right? You're going to get impulse waves down and impulse waves up and down. So even as it's going down, you know, each time you have an impulse wave down, it's met by at least an impulse wave up. But the biggest thing is we're in a downtrend, obviously. And this is Solana. This is the 4-hour chart for Solana. And I just wanted to show you quickly before I end this video, just the way that I trade these short tokens on Kucoin. Again, the link is in the description. If you don't have a Kucoin account, no KYC or VPN required to use Kucoin, which is nice. And anyway, so I put a vertical line here on May 7th just to show that, hey, so this is the level that was acting as support, right? Strong support. Each time it was met with a bounce, this one a lot bigger bounce, and then it was in this kind of falling wedge that broke to the downside right around May 7th, and then it also lost this key level of, you know, price level support, right? It lost that level. Well, then you can go over here on TradingView to the chart that's the SOL3S Kucoin chart, which stands for the 3x short leveraged token. And if you look right here, this is just the inverse of that chart, essentially, where you had resistance, you know, resistance, and it finally broke above that, you know, on May 7th, confirmed it as support, and went on a run, right? So this is just the reverse. If you were to buy this token, basically what's happening is it's using 3x leverage, and it's just the inverse of this, right? If this is going down, you are making money. But on this chart over here, this chart, it will be it going up, right? So this support resistance flip here, which we're doing right now, and we have this high, so now we're kind of looking for this high that's currently happening to, you know, potentially be higher than this high, would just be the reverse of this one over here going down. So I'll go into this more tomorrow. But that really, the way that I trade these tokens is I just pull up the regular chart, which in this case would be the Solana chart, which you could just inverse it. But to me, I just keep it the same way, and then I just watch for key levels of support to get lost. And if they do, and they bearish retest, so when this level got lost and came down and just recently bearish retested it, to me that would be a support resistance flip to the downside. Then I'm going to run over here to this chart, the 3S, and look for that same thing to be happening in reverse, you know, support resistance flip in this case to the upside. Then you can open up your trade here, stop loss just down below, and, you know, let it ride. And then just like any other trade, manage risk, move your stop loss up as you go, you know, and take profits. But we'll go over that a little more tomorrow, and that should about wrap it up for today. Now, if any of you guys that follow my channel know of any tips or tricks to help grow a YouTube channel, as far as maybe ways to get more subscribers, feel free to leave me a comment in the comment section. Obviously, I want to grow this channel organically. I'm not really a huge fan of going to a bunch of other people's pages and leaving comments that say, hey, join my channel, join my channel, join my channel. But I started a Fortnite channel years ago, and I only had that channel for a couple months, and I had like 65 subscribers on that channel. So that's at least my goal with this channel, is to get past 65. We've been hanging out around 50 for a while, And obviously, I'm very grateful for all 53 of you that I currently have. I hope you stick around. But if you have any tips or tricks, please feel free to leave me a comment in the comment section. And if you guys are liking the content, please remember to like and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time. It's T-A